In May, the spacecraft will splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Baja, California, returning science experiments to Earth. Right now, we are at T-minus 6 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. At T-minus 7 minutes, the Falcon 9 Merlin engines were chilled in preparation for super cold liquid oxygen and RP-1 propellants to flow through for liftoff. Coming up in just a bit at T-minus 5 minutes, 15 seconds, the TTEB engine ignition system will be pressurized. The Falcon 9 uses triethyl aluminum triethyl borane, or TTEB, to ignite the 9 Merlin engines. TTEB is a pyrophoric, igniting spontaneously on contact with air. Some other engines use an electric spark ignition rather than a chemical start. Other milestones coming up at T-minus 5 minutes, the launch teams will perform communications checks with the Eastern Range. At T-minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds, the Strongback, which stands side by side with the Falcon 9 to provide power and connections for RP-1, liquid oxygen, and helium, will retract to the launch position of 88.3 degrees. You can see that Strongback standing next to the Falcon 9 rocket now. At T-minus 3 minutes, within the last 3 minutes of the countdown, Stage 1 and Stage 2 liquid oxygen will be complete to flight levels. At T-minus 2 minutes 55 seconds, the Falcon 9 Stage 2 thrust vector control actuators will move the second stage Merlin vacuum engine to verify its ability to control the spacecraft in flight. At T-minus 2 minutes 45 seconds before launch, the Strongback will reach its launch position, canted away from the rocket, again at an angle of 88.3 degrees. At T-minus 2 minutes, the Air Force Range Control Officer will confirm the physical safety of the launch area and Eastern Range, and the Falcon 9 will be verified to be on internal power. At T-minus 1 minute 5 seconds, the Autonomous Flight Termination System is verified for launch. At T-minus 1 minute before launch, the flight computer begins final pre-launch checks. Propellant tanks are pressurized to flight pressure, and both the Dragon spacecraft and Falcon 9 rocket are configured to launch startup mode. At T-minus 45 seconds, after polling Mission Control in Houston, Texas, and the launch teams at SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, Launch Director will give a final go for launch at T-minus 45 seconds. At T-minus 30, the terminal count will begin. At T-minus 18 seconds before liftoff, the launch pad's water deluge system, dubbed Niagara, is activated. It suppresses acoustic waves that radiate from the engine plumes to counter the effect of vibration on the rocket. Rainbirds, fire wrecks, and deluge water maximum flow is over 600,000 gallons per minute. At T-minus 3 seconds before launch, the 9 Merlin engines of the first stage are commanded to ignite using TTEB. And at T-minus 0, rocket computers will command the launch mount to release the vehicle for flight, and the Falcon 9 will lift off, putting out over 1.7 million pounds of thrust, more than 5 747 jets at full power. We are still moving toward an on-time liftoff at 4:30:38. There are no collision avoidance things to be monitored today. Our launch time is an instantaneous window. With launch today, we will reach the space station early morning, April 4th, for a grapple at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Grapple again will be performed by Norishige Kanai of JAXA, backed up by Scott Tingle of NASA, and the Dragon space systems will be monitored by Ricky Arnold. We're at T-minus 2 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
Stage 2, LOX load is closed out.
And LOX load has been closed out on the second stage of the Falcon 9. We are now monitoring the countdown net from SpaceX. It's used by the launch teams during the terminal count. Weather remains go.
Gas closeouts.
AFTS is ready for launch.
The autonomous flight termination system is ready for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Ground gas closeouts.
Dragon is in startup.
Launch directors go for launch.
Confirmation that the launch director is go for launch. The water deluge system will be activated at T-minus 18 seconds.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 configured in flight.
10, 9, 8,
7,
7,
6,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket and the Dragon spacecraft, packed with science and supplies for the International Space Station, humanity's home in low Earth orbit. And the Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. SpaceX ascent commentary is performed by several people. The propulsion
Eagle
engineer
switching
calls
down
out propulsion events. The avionics engineer calls out avionics health and Dragon separation. The range coordinator calls Air Force satellite control network acquisition and loss of signal. And the ground station specialist calls out the SpaceX antenna acquisition and loss of signal. We are 40 seconds into the flight of the Falcon 9. At 1 minute, 5 seconds after liftoff, Falcon 9 will reach transonic speed. The vehicle will pass through an area of maximum aerodynamic pressure called max Q. At 1 minute, 18 seconds after liftoff, this is the point where mechanical stress on the rocket reaches its peak because of the rocket's velocity and resistance created by Earth's
Vehicle
atmosphere.
is supersonic.
And the vehicle is supersonic.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
And confirmation of max Q. One minute, 30 seconds into flight. And the second stage engine chill has begun. Around 2 minutes, 35 seconds into flight, the 9 Merlin engines will sequentially shut down. You'll hear the term MECO, which means main engine cutoff.
We have MECO.
And we have MECO.
Stage separation confirmed. And back ignition.
And we have ignition of the second stage Merlin engine. This is a 6.5 minute burn that brings Dragon into low Earth orbit. This engine produces 210,000 pounds of thrust.
Second stage trajectory nominal.
And you are looking at a live shot of that second stage Merlin engine.
Acquisition of signal in Bermuda.
If you're just joining us, we had an on-time liftoff at 4:30:38 during our instantaneous window. The Dragon is on its way to the International Space Station, where the space station crew awaits its arrival. We are just past 5 minutes into the flight of Dragon.
Position at New Hampshire.
Coming up at the 9-minute, 7-second mark after launch, the second stage engine cuts off. This is called SECO. 1 minute later, at a mission elapsed time of 10 and 7 seconds, Dragon separates from the Falcon 9 second stage, and seconds later, Dragon will reach its preliminary orbit.
Stage 2 trajectory nominal. Stage 1 AFTS has saved.
And we are less than a minute away from SECO. That's the second stage engine cutting off.
Stage 2 terminal guidance. Stage 2 AFTS has saved.
Yes, you go.
And the second stage Merlin engine has shut down. Coming up at about 12
Stage
minutes
2
into
orbit
flight,
insertion.
the Dragon will deploy its solar arrays.
Acquisition of signal Newfoundland.
And you're looking at a live shot from Mission Control in Houston.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And we have confirmation of Dragon separation. You can see this shot on your screen now. Inside the trunk, you can see some unpressurized cargo that'll be making its way to the space station. We are nearing the solar array deploy on the Dragon. They are folded accordion style to the side of the Dragon spacecraft. And we are standing by for a visual confirmation of solar array deploy. And there you have it.
Dragon is in its array deployed to state.
The solar arrays of the Dragon being deployed.
The signal at New Hampshire as expected.
And as the Dragon unfurls its solar wings, the spacecraft will continue on its journey to the International Space Station. The Dragon will arrive at the space station on Wednesday, April 4th. NASA television coverage begins at 5:30 a.m. Eastern, following at 8:30 a.m. Eastern with installation, which will be ground controlled by robotic flight controllers in Mission Control at Houston. Norishige Kanai is the prime for Grapple, backed up by astronaut Scott Tingle of NASA. Ricky Arnold will monitor the Dragon systems during the final approach. So with the successful launch of the Dragon and the Falcon 9, we will now go back to Tori McClendon. Tori?
Thanks, Josh. Well, Dragon's journey now continues as it approaches the International Space Station. Filled with research, supplies, and hardware, it's scheduled to arrive on Wednesday morning, where the crew living on board will retrieve and attach the spacecraft to the station. For more on Dragon's course, let's go back to NASA's Dan Hewitt in Mission Control at Johnson Space Center. Dan?
Hey, Tori, and welcome back, everybody, here to Mission Control Houston. A successful launch, Dragon now in orbit, but that's just the first part of the journey. So it's going to execute a series of thruster firings over the next day and a half or so, ultimately arriving at the space station on Wednesday. And that's when things really kick into gear for the crew on board. So the team here in Mission Control is going to be getting the station ready. The team out in Hawthorne is going to be monitoring Dragon, and the crew, of course, on board is going to be getting ready for that Dragon to arrive and grapple. Now, Randy, it's got to be just absolutely surreal to look out the window and see something flying at you when you're on the space station.
It is, especially for Norishige Kanai and Scott Tingle, who've been out there for 3.5 months, to see something from Earth coming up to the space station. That's a really special time. And knowing that all that training they've been doing will actually get put into practice. So they'll keep practicing on the robotic simulator over the next couple days until Wednesday, but they're ready to go. And Norishige will be very surprised when he sees that thing outside, just outside the grapple envelope of the arm, and how smooth and steady the vehicle is. It's a lot more smooth and steady than we do have in training, because we go ahead and train to the worst case, and we fortunately are able to have a vehicle that flies better than that. And so then, once we get it at birth, they'll hand it off to the robotics experts here in Mission Control, who will actually do the birthing and fly the robotic arm, and then the crew's waiting to where we start doing the leak checks. And so in between this Dragon vehicle and station, there's the vestibule, where we have to make sure that area doesn't have any leaks with the seals around both sides, so that we can then open the hatches. That's exciting, because then once you open the hatches, that's when the magic starts for the next month. They just came off a very busy, successful EVA, had a day, breather over the weekend, and now we're right back into Dragon ops. But it's also, that's why we're there. There's a ton of science on the Dragon that will come up with Dragon, go back with Dragon, and also a ton of science they've been doing in between. They'll actually go back down on Dragon as well. And so they'll unload that, science stuff, and then all the cargo and tons of cargo that will be put on the station, that the clothes, the food, anything else that is needed. They'll be unloading that, and then taking all the things that are just coming back to Earth they've been saving up and stowing away in all the different spots on station, load that up as well. And the best part, the exciting part, other than seeing something from Earth that's coming up to join them, is that on board, finally, there's something for them. Each crew member has care packages that their families put together, and so that's an exciting time to have something for the people you love down on Earth being sent up to you with a special package. There's fresh food. There's other care packages with additional food up there. We had a pizza come up on one of our cargo vehicles that just, man, that pizza making, best pizza I have ever had, just because it was so different in texture and taste than anything we had up there for those 3.5 months. So again, very exciting time, but also hugely, hugely busy. They'll be going non-stop for the next 4 weeks, but it's doing the hardcore science and stuff that station as the world-renowned orbiting laboratory is there for. And so it's a really, really exciting time for them, and I bet they're going to have a really good time on Wednesday doing that grapple.
All right, well, first step's going to be Dragon getting there. So, again, it's going to be flying over the next couple of hours, arriving Wednesday morning. We'll be back here in Mission Control Houston when that occurs, so be sure to tune back in as we get ready to snag a Dragon out of outer space. But that'll do it for us here in Houston. We'll send it back to you, Tori, down at Kennedy.
Thanks, Dan. This concludes our live coverage of the launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon for NASA's CRS-14 mission. For more information about the International Space Station, visit www.nasa.gov/station. For more information on the mission, visit www.nasa.gov/SpaceX. And don't forget to tune in for the post-launch news conference on NASA television at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Tori McClendon. From the team here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, thank you for joining us. We will now leave you with replays of the launch.